Hello and welcome to Charlotte's Lookalike Library. This is a little video series where I tell you how to tell apart some common lookalike plants. Today we're talking about ironweed. There are two species that often get confused here in eastern North America. We have New York ironweed and we have upland ironweed. So we're going to go through some key identifying features that you would find in a dichotomous key, but I'm going to show you the quick version and the key features to pay attention to so that you can tell them apart with confidence when you're out in the field. The first feature I look for is habitat. Where is the plant growing? New York ironweed tends to prefer moist, wet meadows, moister conditions in general. And upland ironweed I tend to find in drier conditions, often in woodland edges, maybe more part shade. But that's not always definitive. I've seen New York ironweed growing in drier conditions, so that's one clue, but alone it's not always enough. The second feature I look at is if the plant is mature and already gone to seed, you can look at the fluff, which is the pappus on the seed heads. And those are these little fluffy projections. Think of a dandelion, the fluff that the seeds create that you like to blow into the wind. Ironweed has that as well, similar but different. And if you look at the fluff of these two species, you'll notice the color is usually quite different. The color on upland ironweed is much more of a yellowish, whitish tan. And the color on New York ironweed actually varies quite a bit. I've seen it more purplish, purple brown, or a deep tan like camel color. Again, that's not always definitive because there's variation. But once you've seen them enough, the two different species, you'll be able to develop an eye. A third feature to look at, and this is actually probably the most definitive and the most reliable because you can look at this on the plant, whether it's pre-flowering, flowering, or fruiting. So really, throughout its phenology, throughout its lifespan, you can look at this feature and have a pretty good idea which species you're looking at. And that is the leaf shape and size. So the leaves on upland ironweed are much broader and shorter than New York, and they also taper more abruptly towards the base where they attach to the stem. New York ironweed leaves are much longer and narrower, and they have more of a gradual taper. The last feature I look at does require a microscope, so not always the most useful and not always the most accessible, but if you have one, this is really helpful to be sure and definitive. If you look under the microscope, you'll see at the seed, you want to take a seed, look under the microscope, you'll see that where the pappus or the fluff or the bristles attach to the seed, there are two layers. There's one layer of bristles that are much longer and more visible, but there's also an outer layer of bristles that are much shorter. And on upland ironweed, that shorter layer of bristles are much more pronounced, much more noticeable and numerous. That shorter layer in New York ironweed is more like scales, and they're much less visible and much less numerous. I will caveat all this with the fact that ironweed will hybridize and does hybridize. So sometimes that can make identification tricky, as you'll see some variation or some melding of the characteristics between the two species, but often you'll be able to tell if it leans more in one direction or the other, which species it is. I also want to mention there's a third species of ironweed that's native to our region, Tall Ironweed, and I didn't spend as much time on that today because I don't actually have a physical sample to show you, but there are two features that I look at that will help me distinguish that species from these other two. Number one, the height. It is extremely tall, or it can get extremely tall. I've seen it sometimes almost twice my height and, up to 10 feet or more. And the other two do not get that tall. So if you see any specimen that's that tall, it's tall ironweed. The second thing that I look for, and this is actually very definitive, is if you look at the base of the flower, these two species, New York ironweed and upland ironweed, have these pointy little projections that are coming out of the base of the flower. The tips of the filaries are long and pointed and they stick out. You will not see that on tall ironweed. They're round and acute and they're smoother. And so that is enough to tell you that you're looking at tall ironweed if you're not seeing those little projections. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to my newsletter, find me on social media, and give me some comments to encourage me to continue producing more of these videos. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.